So, hey, it's been a while since we turned this thing on, but last year we did something that I'd never done before, but I thought was a cool idea. I laid out just about everything in a sort of tell-all, behind the curtain type of peek for this channel and how it performed as a whole on the year. I think openness and transparency is important in all walks of life, but when it comes to YouTube content, I think it's important to discuss things like this that are kind of taboo to some other creators. Not only do I think it holds me to a certain standard to be open about things like this, keeping an honest line on how we operate here, but I also think that it can be incredibly interesting to anyone curious, both creating content for themselves or just wanting some insight into what the day-to-day of content looks like. So I had fun doing it last year, chatting with you all things with it, so I figured, why not? Let's do it again. Today, we're taking a look at what 2024 brought along, the good, the bad, and honestly, a lot of surprising elements this year. So drop your thoughts as we go along, drop a like if you enjoy the video, and make sure to subscribe for more Black Ops 6 and other FPS content here in the future. But anyways, let's get into it. So got a lot of notes here. That's one of those things that I just wanted to use the teleprompter, at least for that intro. I've had it for so long and I don't use it like ever. I'd like to use it more in the future, but from here, it's probably not gonna be as much eye-to-eye contact. It's gonna be me reading a lot of notes, reading a lot of just stats and everything like that. So anyways, let's get into it. Stats for 2024 at a sort of baseline, just quick little glance. Views, we ended up getting 31.2 million views, which is crazy to me. And we'll touch on that in a second as to why it's crazy. Watch time, we had 1.7 million hours. And that is crazy to think about, because if you took all of the watch time that people watched of my dumb video game videos and went back in time with how long that would be, that would bring you back to 1830. That is actually nuts to think about. Subs, we ended up gaining here on the year from January 1st to December 30th here. 61,000 new subscribers. Welcome to the community. Welcome to the family if you guys are new. So that's a cool little like glance at a year, but I think if you dig a little bit deeper, beyond just those like first face value stats, I think there's a lot of cool stuff and a lot of surprises that definitely got me this year. So let's talk about some highlights of this year. First, I think the easiest one to spot from afar is we finally hit 600,000 subscribers. This may not seem like a big deal to a lot of people by comparison, and I don't mean that in the sense of like hitting 600,000 subscribers isn't a big deal in and of itself, but like people pass milestones all the time. 100,000 subscriber milestones are really cool, awesome, yes, but it's not like, oh, 250,000, 500, a million or something like that, where they're like the big milestone ones. So for some people that just might be like golf clap, like good job, you did it type of thing. But for me, it was a big demon to vanquish. Let me explain. The last few years, growth-wise, have been a really big roller coaster where, for a number of different reasons, whether it be the game and people's interest in it, Vanguard was a prime example of like people just did not care about that from the very beginning, and then content became stale for some things. So like, I mean, how many times can you talk about an update in a game that is losing its sort of shine in March to May to June or whatever that before the next game is revealed, and a few other things like that. But with insane growth ahead of Modern Warfare 2, obviously not many people had that steep drop off on their bingo card. Like, having covered COD for 12 years, I genuinely think that the hype factor was like 95 out of 100 going into the game's launch. Like, people were stoked for that game, and it was to this day still some of my best performing videos leading up to that launch. But then comes season 1, I kind of think that hype level was down to like 20, where the diehards were interested, but I'll tell you, that view drop off, that growth drop off was something that I don't think that I've seen that sharp of a decline in the, again, 12 years that I've been doing content daily. But for context, up until that point, we were gaining about 75 to 100,000 subscribers a year on average across like the last 4 to 5 years. So at that point, when 2023 hit and we had just 15,000 subscribers of an increase to the community, that was like a brick wall to hit. And so to claw our way back and to get that momentum to grow at a solid pace once again, it was a vindicating feeling where I guess this sort of self-doubt was something you could push to the side. Like that, am I still cut out for this? Am I still making content that is worth watching? It's nice to know that that was sort of just an off period where people didn't enjoy the game, whatever the case it may have been. Because I'll tell you that for literally any creator, if you're not a creator, everybody goes through that am I cut out for this still type of thing, where it's that self-doubt. And you never like to see that kind of stuff, but it's nice to see that we kind of rebounded here in 2024. Second, stats-wise, we did some really cool stuff. The two biggest things to me were making it on trending for YouTube, not once, but twice. And another cool thing that is like almost a first in my channel's history. But the first of that, of course, the craziest, was the second time we hit trending. The first one we hit YouTube gaming trending, which is cool, and it makes sense being in a gaming niche here here within the content. But for those that aren't aware, there's a gaming trending, music trending, movie trending, and YouTube main trending. Gaming is one thing that, of course, makes sense, but the second time we hit trending before the launch of Black Ops 6 here was YouTube main trending. Like all of YouTube, the top 50-ish videos of all of YouTube. At one point, my video is right next to the new Cobra Kai season trailer. Like, that's crazy for me to consider. Something that mainstream to then be considered and next to that in the trending. So that was really cool. We've been on gaming trending before, but I'm not 100% sure if we've ever actually been on main trending. So that was a really cool thing that happened this year. Another crazy point for this past year was the first time in my channel's history. Actually, I don't think I should say that. It probably like the second time. I think Zombies Chronicles, we did this as well. But for one of the only other times here that we ended up having in my channel's history, the launch of the game was not the peak for what we had in terms of viewership and audience in the year, which primarily covering multiplayer, like you probably wouldn't expect it all that much because like usually that's when Warzone takes focus or whatever. Like it's just a smaller update to multiplayer. But for the first time since I think, again, Zombies Chronicles 2015, that was almost 10 years, the launch of the game wasn't our high point, which is awesome because every single year I can basically tell you, okay, the launch of the game is the peak. It's just gonna go downhill from here. My channel focuses a lot on like the building of interest and like here's what's upcoming rather than a lot of stuff that's long term. But it's crazy that we had some videos blow up in the year of support, not at that sort of pinnacle in that launch that we'd expect previously. And speaking of those videos that did blow up, another crazy thing here in regards to what we achieved in terms of that viewership is, I want to say it was like for the third time ever, we held a real time on the channel over 1 million views in 48 hours. For context, that is insane unless you have a channel that is like millions of subscribers and clearly millions of viewers on a daily basis. My channel's large, but not that large. And while it was only the third or fourth time ever doing that, the cooler part was that we held that 1+ million for a week straight of that. Whereas in the past, the 2 or 3 other times that's ever happened was like 1 or 2 days max. So that just broke my brain. We'll get to why that happened in a second, but the third and I think perhaps the coolest part here out of 2024 and the sort of digging deeper under the stats was that at one point during the year, like earlier, I think it was around June or so, June, maybe July also, there was a point where not a single video in my top 10 performing videos of 2024 up until that point was a Call of Duty video. And that sounds weird to say, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, as we've just uploaded COD and Black Ops 6 almost exclusively for the last 4 months or so. But as someone who's uploaded COD only for about the first 10 years here of this channel, and as someone who is just miserable with Modern Warfare 2, last year sort of wading the water in the additional games category was a semi-terrifying experience. This year, we kind of dove into it, and it was liberating. We uploaded Helldivers 2, X-Defiant, Delta Force, The Finals, Payday, COD mods, and like some homegrown projects like that, and others that it was nice to try things out. Big picture, as a content creator, when you change topic or you change that scope of focus on content, you can expect the content to not do as well. And for some, it did that. But the massive surprise to me was the fact that over the last like 16 months or so in trying to change up the content that we upload, we never really lost. Like, yeah, we kind of stayed the same. We kind of like plateaued a little bit, but to keep the same viewership from people that expect COD and then we're getting something else and giving that a try, that's a huge win in and of itself. But one of the crazy things out of that, and not trying to be egotistical here or anything, but like just out of sheer surprise, I think that we were one of, if not the largest channel regularly uploading X-Defiant when it was kicking. Like, yeah, Jev and all the other FPS creators were touching on it, but dedicated daily X-Defiant content, I think that we might have led the pack there, which is nuts to consider. But to have 10 plus years of only COD, none of your videos in the top 10 performing your channel to start the year, that's crazy cool. And again, crazy liberating that it validates that, okay, if I don't want to upload COD, there's still some cool stuff that can happen. But rounding out the stats on the year at a glance here, the other things that you'll see in that dashboard is revenue. And of course, that's blurred out. This is the only thing that I'm not going to give you exact figures on. And I think that's fair. Personally, I wouldn't ask anyone what their income looks like. I was just raised on that concept of that's a bit rude. It's too personal and it's not my place. What I will say, for the sake of the discussion here, in comparisons by like percentages, just to talk compared to years prior to discuss the ups and downs of the year, the only thing that I'll give like a relative number is this. Enough. I make enough to pay the bills, enough to pay some of the talented people that I work with, and the team that I'm building out here in the coming months. and it's enough to be comfortable. I'm not making mansion or Lamborghini money, but I'm sure as shit making enough playing and talking about video games that I'm grateful for the support for everything over the years, that it can be something that can do all those things of paying the team that I work with, paying the bills. And I fully recognize how fortunate I am to be able to do that. So by no means is this ever supposed to be a flex or anything. Additionally, what the year-over-year comparisons will attribute for YouTube is revenue. As like any business or investment strategy, brand deals for sponsored content, partners like Gamer Advantage and the like provide additional income, but those we're not really going to discuss until we get to the sort of business side of things, taking a deeper dive into that for any context. Kind of discussing for, again, anybody in the content space that's interested. But anyways, let's talk about 2024 versus 2023. 2024, again, we had 32.1 million views. 2023, we had 15.5 million views. Now, the reason for that increase, I would say, is a better game, more interest. It wasn't something that was a game that was marketed as a sort of DLC. There was a huge focus that we did this year and just the last couple of months on short form content, which is an exponential viewership increase. Harder conversion rates to subs, which we'll touch on in a second, but admittedly, one huge thing that I have to personally work on is residual content and a different approach to like the 12-month content game. What I mean by this is that, and I'm sure that plenty know what I'm talking about, knock on wood, without fail, I can tell you that I'm going to do well content-wise from the MP beta to the launch and season 1. But then, almost like clockwork, I'll see viewership drop off by about 40% every single year. And I don't mean that in the way of like, wow, why aren't people watching my videos? That type of thing. I've been in this game long enough that I expect it. I know what happens. I know why people drop off. It's because my channel is always sort of in that conversation with the buzz of what's next. And in doing so, it's great for covering the game pre-launch, at launch, and giving the best info I can for updates, classes, settings, guides, things like dark ops, camos, and such. But everyone already's learned that kind of stuff by the end of season 1 and the sort of launch there at that point. There's only a finite number of larger things that happen like that in COD. So when exhausted, usually again around that season 1 time frame and the first major content of that, what's next? Well, the interest drops. So what I have to do is find a way to pivot and transition that early and high interest into another format, keeping it higher throughout the year rather than seeing that large drop off every year. This is just me speaking methodology, how I personally review these situations. Again, I don't want it to sound like complaining because I'm not. Watch time in 2024 was 1.7 million hours, and then in 2023 was 1.2 million hours. That's something you might notice, that sort of discrepancy is not nearly as large as you think, and we'll touch on that again in a second. And then subscribers gained in 2024 was 61,000. Last year in 2023, just under 16,000. So definitely a major increase, but like, shouldn't it be more with that many views? Almost a doubling of last year's, actually over a doubling of last year's viewership. Why is that? Well, it's short form content. As a predominantly long-form channel, shorts are a great boost to that sort of real time on 48 hours, how many views you get in those days, and sort of like the ego of it, like looking at it, you're like, I'm doing great. Views are really high and everything like that. And it's already helped ease my mind seeing views in the last 60 minutes and 48-hour charts and stuff like that, staying high off those videos, not driving me mad thinking, oh God, I need to get a video up. But they also don't translate well to growth in that sense. When you present something of substance in a short form format, you've got, in my case, 60 seconds or fewer to make it worth the view, to tell a story, and then to inform that viewer about whatever it is in as in-depth a way as possible. And if you're doing your job properly, it's something that you have 3 different outcomes. Number 1, they don't care, they swipe away, totally cool, not their cup of tea, they don't really care about the topic. Number 2, they like it, but you've been too thorough enough, you've done your job well enough that they've learned all they need to know and don't really care to subscribe for more and then swipe away. And number 3, there is that option that they like it and then they want to view more, thus subscribing. Now, incentivizing that or calling viewers to subscribe in short form especially is insanely hard to do without forcing that swipe away. One of the big metrics that YouTube really values in terms of short form content is watch percentage. So if somebody watches 80 to 90% of a short, that video is going to get pushed into the shorts feed and recommended even more. But if they don't really care, or if they're kind of turned off by somebody saying, hey, subscribe in the first 10 seconds of a 60-second short, well, obviously that short form percentage of the average view duration is way lower and they'll swipe away. Thus, YouTube thinking, okay, not a good enough short to really recommend. So it's insanely hard to do, and while we've had an exponential amount of new viewers and views total compared to last year, the subscriber ratio to views could definitely be better. So that's one thing that we have to learn to sort of balance here in the future. Revenue, 2023 to 2024, we saw a 48.79% increase in revenue from YouTube's end. So again, should it not be larger, over doubling your viewership here in terms of that revenue from year to year? So here's where I can go into the hardcore nerdy stuff about this, and where, if you'll end up indulging me here, I can go off on these sort of tangents that I don't really get to talk about this stuff often with people, but here's where we can go into how YouTubers make money. So there's genuinely no easy answer for how much a YouTuber will make. There are some generalities we could say, but if you want specifics, you'll almost never nail it down. So creators get paid through YouTube ads. So Call of Duty, Battlefield, XDefiant, Gray Zone Warfare, the finals, whatever the game they play, they don't pay them. It's YouTube and Google AdSense, unless otherwise specified as a sponsored content piece. Advertisers place ads into this program that's distributed through Google AdSense, and creators make a rate of X amount of dollars every 1,000 views, a CPM, cost per milli, Latin for thousand. Believe it or not, this rate changes every single day, every single one. And while people mention their averages, it changes every single day based on a number of different factors. Time of the year. Q4 we just had was the best ad rates you'll see in the year because Christmas is a spending holiday. Q1 upcoming has the worst rates because, well, everybody just spent their money for the holidays. Other things like region of the world. The US has better ad rates than, say, Uzbekistan. Content niche is also key. Gaming has an okay CPM, but financial and real estate content, from my understanding, pays out insanely nicely, like way higher than gaming. So there are many different factors here that go into this, but really it all comes down to one thing: views. And, well, watch time also, but views primarily. We'll get to watch time in a second. Subscribers, likes, dislikes, that kind of stuff ultimately mean nothing in the grand scheme of the monetary side of content. Now, they are important because subscribers are the first ones to get that content. They're the first notified of it. So if it performs well in that initial notification click in the first few minute views, it has a higher chance of being pushed to a much larger audience in recommended, and likes, dislikes, comments all count as engagements, which is factored into that. But pay-wise, just the views count. But that still doesn't answer the major view increase, but slightly larger increase in revenue. That's where watch time comes into play. So watch time is the one thing YouTube loves, like loves. The goal of the platform is to keep you here as long as possible, so it rewards that long form content and watch time, and its opportunity for mid-roll ads to play the longer the video, or manually placed by the creators, is exponentially increased the longer the video. This is where that direct correlation in my channel comes from. That massive spike in viewership is partially because of short form content. Shorts don't have mid-roll ads, and they make next to no money. Like, it's monetized, but does minimal. Let's take November 13th to December 10th as an example. My most viewed 28-day period ever, 10 million views. Have never done that in my channel's history before, but short form views accounted for 7.5 million of that, and long form only accounted for 2.5 million. So the revenue split was 90% revenue in that time came from long form, despite being 5 million views less than the short form. That totaled only 10% of the revenue in that 28-day window. So you see what I mean, where it accounts for like nothing? Also, coming back to that same time frame to relate back to our discussion about shorts, again, 5 million more views, and yet I was only 6,000 subscribers less gained by comparison to long form content. Revenue, again, some of the stuff here that we also did this year was brand deals and sponsored content. We took a bit more this year, but hopefully done in a way that it didn't sort of become detrimental to the content as a whole. Some I missed the mark on. Like, the one that I thought was really cool was going to be the Payday one, because I was a Payday fan growing up and playing those games all throughout high school and college. But we did one and it just kind of missed the mark. It was not very well received, but other ones were pretty cool, I thought, where people really were interested, on top of it being a sponsored content piece. Like Delta Force, we had a video that popped off through a sponsor, which I was really surprised by. But I think last year, when we discussed briefly the revenue situation, last year was a down year. I think this year is where I want to be from just YouTube. Again, still nothing like mansions or Lamborghinis, but not worrying about having to pay bills or stressing for that kind of stuff. But those external factors last year were about 50-50, where it kept me afloat more, whereas this year it's probably like 75-25. I'd love to find a way to build that up more, because that offers more stability, but I mean, we'll try and find that balance in 2025 maybe. But speaking of 2025, let's talk about my personal goals here. Statistically, I hate talking about these types of things. Like, I don't ever like to say, I want to hit X amount of subscribers, I want to hit X amount of views. Like, it'd be awesome to hit 700,000 subscribers in 2025, but I'm also not going to actively in my mind be like, I have to hit 700,000 subscribers, because it's just not my focus. Personal goals, though, I got a couple of these. I want to feel less inclined to daily upload. I don't know if that's going to be a weird thing to talk about, but it's one thing that you might have noticed over the last couple of days, actually, where I think over the last 10 days, let me check actually real quick. Yeah, over the last 10 days, we ended up taking off 4 days of long form content. And that's something that I don't think that I've ever done that consistently, of like day on, day off, day on, day off. But it's happened a couple of times, and it might actually even happen tomorrow as well if there's nothing for the Squid Game event revealed. But I want to feel less inclined to do this. Doing this for 12 years now, full time for 7, going on 8 years, this has been my biggest enemy. In those last 8 years, I've probably taken off a total of maybe a month. Like, I don't miss days often, and it's only recently in the grand scheme of things that I stopped caring about missing a day or so. But it's still terrifying from a creator perspective, because in an industry where everything is dictated on recent performance, where solid residual viewership is hard to sustain, consciously taking time off is a terrifying thing. But I want to try. I want to be able to have more time for myself. I want to be able to have more time to like stream on off days or work on second channel content, which is something we'll get to in a second. I just want to have more time to do other things, if that makes sense. Like, I want to try and get more of a balance in doing more things, but in doing that, I do have to scale back a little bit, which might come with maybe, say, hiring another editor or something like that, but it could just be simply not daily uploading on the channel as much, whereas maybe we'll have 5 days a week or something like that of content. But I want to tell myself that it's okay to do work elsewhere. Stream and interact with people, work on a second channel, whatever. Speaking of, I want to upload to my second channel more consistently. I don't know about every day, that might be tough, but at least regularly. I mean, I started with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle here last month, that I truly got pulled into that game, but I also bit off a bit more than I could chew because it was around Thanksgiving and the holiday, and I was still posting a video a day on main, as I am now. A lot of that stuff still being grind-worthy stuff that I had to play Black Ops 6 and everything still at that point, that obviously I didn't keep up with it. But I would very much so like to start an actual content team and get something going here with this. I work with a fantastic editor right now that's doing all the short form content you're seeing on the channel now. I'd love to start building a team out for the second channel, which would be really cool. But with so much more to go on, might take a few more baby steps before jumping in fully to that for like daily content or whatever. I also want to continue uploading more non-COD content. During last year's year in review, I set a goal for myself: average at least 1 video a week that wasn't COD. So 52 videos that were not Call of Duty related. And I'm happy to say that I think we hit that, and I'd like to keep that up. Admittedly, I also just, every single year is the same, and it's a bit agonizing to get where we're at on the calendar right now, because I can almost map out how it's going to go to the day. Every single year goes as follows: holy cow, the reveal, save us from this terrible game, so excited for the next thing upcoming. The multiplayer reveal, and then beta, it's an even split of like 50-50, love, hate, what they see. Lead up to the game, from the beta to launch, that's when everybody's kind of happy, excited about the game, because those who don't care aren't really looking for more content at that point. But people that are excited, they're excited. Launch to season 1, all absurdly positive comments, because frankly, I think this is where my personal best content comes out, being helpful and explanatory in a lot of different things, for like camo guides and dark ops guides like we put up recently and stuff like that, that I think it's useful, and I feel good making the content. People reciprocate the good feeling of the content, that they like it, and it's all positive. But then, I'm not even kidding, like the max of the first week after season 1 drops, players, and by extension how it correlates to me and viewership and the comments and all that kind of stuff, turns incredibly sour. People get mad because they inevitably botched the integration with season 1 in Warzone. People are angry at whatever, and then if you say anything positive, you're a shill. If you pile on, you're just a COD hater. And it's just every single year, man, it's so tiring. Like, that's also partially why I've not uploaded a lot in the last 10 days, because I don't care. I'm just doing my own thing, and I don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. And it's just literally every year. So as depressing as it sounds, and as first world a problem as it sounds, the first like 5 to 6 months out of the year, I don't really like creating COD content as much in recent years. I'm a positive person, but when the entire scene surrounding what you do is just sour and bitter over every little thing, and then by extension takes it out on the creator as well, it's not as enjoyable from my perspective. So that's where I like to turn to, again, creating other content, and why last year was so liberating. If I didn't like something, I just uploaded something else, and it was fun. So in 2025, I'm turning 30. I want to start a new decade of my life taking less time dealing with bullshit. If it ain't making me happy, I don't want to deal with it. So we're going to hopefully keep that up as well. I also would love to build my team further in 2025. Like I talked about, I've worked with some talented individuals. The past year or two here, I worked with a great thumbnail artist. He's been doing his own thing, so we've been doing like in-game screenshot thumbnails that I don't have to hit him up or feel like I'm imposing on his time. We started working with an editor doing everything for the short form content, so I want to start building that even further, and then by extension, hopefully scaling the content to something that is larger, and what you can actually experience is a larger thing in the video. I also want to expand some business ventures. Biggest one on the docket is a printing business. My wife and I have been looking to do this for a little while, and it's one of those things that like we're teaching ourselves as we go along. We've been doing small batch orders for local businesses, but ideally, I would love to have a wing of this little startup dedicated to apparel and merchandise here on the YouTube side of things as well. Not only like just for that, but a part of that revenue model of that new business. Consider this my feelers thing here. If you'd ever want to buy any apparel, and I'm not just talking like merch, like espresso merch or something like that, like gamer merch, stuff like that, I'd love to have this be a disconnected apparel line as well. But if you're interested, let me know. And finally, I want to have a good year of personal, professional, and healthy growth. I'll probably elaborate more on these things in the near future. I think we might have another video of these like personal things that I want to talk about when I turn 30 here in about a week and a half, reflecting on my 20s, the last 10 years, and the content, what we've done, and then what the next decade holds. But for the year ahead, obviously business success would be phenomenal, but I just want to be present more. When I look at my 20s, I've been sat in front of like these computer screens for most of it. I wouldn't change a thing because obviously all that work and dedication has presented me with opportunities I never thought that I'd ever have. Never would I have dreamed of that. But at the same time, I do feel like I've missed out on a lot. I feel like I'd like to be present and in the moment more. And I think that's probably my biggest one here, because it might sound like hippie or something, but I don't know. I've always been existential, but thinking about rounding into a new decade of my life has kind of not put me in an existential crisis mode, but more in an inquisitive perspective, a like sort of reflective state where I want to do more living than I did this past 10 years. You might hear that again in our video, again, coming up in a little bit, but like, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So overall, I mean, 2024, that was my year. I'd say successful, an unconventional year for the Espresso channel by comparison to the last 10 years of content and all of that. But genuinely though, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I truly greatly appreciate you and anyone who's ever come across this channel here. Thank you for continuing the support of the channel. It's not lost on me just how lucky I am to still be able to do this as a job. Akin to professional sports, I'd say that content is very much a situation of it could stop at literally any day, any moment. So to have longevity is truly one of the rarest things in this ecosystem. So to still be kicking it years and years later, thank you. Thank you, thank you. I cannot thank you enough for the support. Genuinely do appreciate it. So with that said, I think that's where we're gonna wrap it up. It's been a lot of me yapping. Oh my God, I looked at the time on this video. Holy crap. So thanks for sticking around. Thanks for coming out to the channel at all throughout this past year, whether it's your first video you watched, your 300th year on the channel and the year. Thank you for the support. Really do appreciate it. Wishing you the happiest of New Year's and looking forward to seeing what the year brings both here on the channel and in real life. So with that, much love. Take care and Happy New Year.